Welcome to this workshop of the Hopkins School Board. A special hello to our community members who are joining us via the YouTube live stream, and of course to my board colleagues and our student board reps and our wonderful district leaders who have joined us in the Google Meet this evening. We have two items on our workshop agenda tonight, and the first one is an opportunity to discuss the 2021 school board election candidate information session. There was a little bit of confusion. The session is not happening tonight at this workshop. This is when we will be discussing when that session will take place and some of the information that will be shared at that session. So to provide our community with some additional context, we hold our seats on the school board for 4 years, and there are 3 seats that are coming up for election this year, and the election being on election day in November. And, it's really our priority as a board to make sure that all of our community members have the information that you need to become a candidate for school board and to understand the process and all of the information you need to know if you're interested in running. So with that, I'll turn it over to my board colleagues, Director Adams and Director Peterson, who will be facilitating the candidate information session, and they will also be facilitating our planning discussion this evening.
Thanks so much, Chair Bouchard. While Director Adams troubleshoots his connectivity issues, I'll just take a little point here. So a humongous shout out to Jolene, who was able to actually hunt down the 2019 Candidate Forum WebEx or presentation for us. And so we have that to roll through tonight. But before we get into that nitty gritty, what I also wanted to do is just discuss potential dates and attendees first, just at sort of high level. Steve and I discussed this morning that we thought June 15th was potentially a good date to do this, kind of post board work, but before the summer really gets into full swing. Previously, it had been Wendy, Donovan, and Rhoda that facilitated the session, at least according to the slide deck. So we were thinking that perhaps it would be Steve and I and Rhoda if you could attend. So just wanted to run the June 15th date past all of you and check your schedules for that. We were thinking probably like a 6:30 time frame, somewhere in there. That works for you, Rhoda? Okay, awesome. So we'll tentatively plan the 6:15 date. It's a Tuesday, so we thought, keeping in our Tuesday block-offs. Then what we can also do is if a board meeting does come up for some reason, if legislature pushes, we can always discuss changing that. But tentatively, we will plan for that. So I have a feeling this is going to showcase my ineptitude trying to share this slide deck, but one second. Share my screen, maybe. Hold, please. I haven't ever had to share my screen on one of these, so.
I have faith in you.
Do you? Gosh, yeah. At least somebody does. Okay. Start broadcast. Oh, it gives me a countdown. This is very. Okay. Is it share? Oh, gosh.
Almost. So you are presenting it. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Mm-hmm. Look at that. She can do it, folks. Obviously the high level stuff, we would have the marketing team update the branding and the font to match our new branding that we've released. And really what I'm just looking for is a little bit of input from my board colleagues around tweaks, messaging changes we might want to make. But for the most part, this feels pretty cohesive. Obviously we'll update who we are. It'll be Steve and Rhoda and I. I like the idea of kind of really driving into Vision 2031, kind of where we're going. Any thoughts on that? Do you just interrupt me, I guess, if you have thoughts? Excellent. So on this slide, it's obviously some high-level overview stats about Hopkins, I'd like to beef this up a little bit, potentially with a breakdown of our student body, maybe some numbers around open enrollment, just kind of beef up this slide a little bit with a little bit more relevant data and updated stats.
We can do that.
Okay. And I'll take notes on this and I'll share it all with the marketing team as well. So any other thoughts? I'd be curious too, as far as like demographic breakdowns, if any of that feels important as we, like what kind of information do you think is most important? Because there's also, I'll share this one that talks about our diverse student body in the strengths and challenges slide. I'll let you guys just review this and share any changes that you would like to make, any additions or removals of bullet points.
I think any information that helps potential candidates understand that Hopkins truly is a microcosm of the world with more than 71 languages represented. And, we can talk about our 3 language groups.
Oh, I like that. Maybe adding on this slide, Rhoda, instead of just these really kind of vanilla statistics, really talking more about that
I think
focus.
so.
Okay.
And I think my team can take care of quite a few of these context slides.
Yeah, I figured. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything revolutionary. I think most of this content exists already, if not in their brains and other presentations. Any thoughts on the bullet points here as far as our strengths and challenges and as those have changed over the last 2 years? Give you a second to read it, guys.
I think because our financial situation, revenue uncertainty, yes, still captures the current state of affairs. But I think that we could add a little more nuance there to really help our potential candidates, who of course are also our community members, understand specifically why that uncertainty exists. And, perhaps echoing some of these conversations that we as a board have been having, certainly since January, around the impact of COVID on enrollment and the fact that has exacerbated this sense of revenue uncertainty as well as political condition. So maybe a little bit more detail there would be helpful.
Yeah, what I was kind of toying with too in my brain, Jen, as I was reviewing this, was taking really the strengths and challenges and rather breaking it down into board goals and opportunities, because our board goals really with right sizing the budget and becoming an anti-racist educational system and all of that feels like it could apply to these in a way, like if we were to talk more about our board goals and what's driven us over the past 2 years. Not that, who knows what they're going to be next year, but I think that could at least focus on it rather than saying challenges, but maybe say, board goals and mission drivers or something like that.
Yeah, I think organizationally, thinking through the organization of the presentation, that makes really good sense. And I'm always trying to spread more awareness of the board goals too. There are some community members who don't know that the board goals exist. And really that's one of the mechanisms by which our community can hold us accountable to the work that we're supposed to be doing here, right? So putting those board goals front and center would be really helpful for our candidates, I believe.
Perfect. So maybe what we do is we take some of these strengths and really move those into an About Hopkins slide and take some of these challenges and move these into more of a board goal slide. Does that feel kind of where we're headed with that?
That seems to make sense for me, especially the opportunity gaps. I feel like that could be explained out a lot more because, for instance, all the conversations we had last week, a lot of that would be pertinent to opportunity gaps.
Okay. I struggled with this one a little bit. It felt kind of like a slide that could be read, but perhaps not expanded upon a lot. So I'd be curious your thoughts on this. My thought was, we could talk about why each of us ran in our intros, which might be, perhaps more impactful. We could talk about, and it does get into this down here, which feels a little dry. So my thought would be kind of revamping why you should run to, what makes a really impactful board member, why we ran, rather than kind of this cookie cutter thing. Just my thought. I realize you're all seeing this for the first time, and I got to marinate in it for a little bit today, but. Any feelings on that?
Yeah, I like that idea. And I think there's also some good guidance. MSBA has kind of several pages that talks about why you should run.
Yeah, and I know that previously we had, I have an echo. That was you, Shannon. Previously there was a packet too, right, that we put together that the attendees got. So it had a lot of kind of that more dry read before bed type stuff versus, presenting in front of a group. So, on this next slide, I liked this because I think it talks a lot. I would maybe zhuzh it up, but I liked that it really talked about what we do as school board members versus what the community actually thinks we do, and helps the potential candidates understand really that we're the high level governing board versus the in the weeds, at each individual buildings, that we're more overseeing policy and the budget. And so I think talking through this and talking through the responsibilities is probably pretty important. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, ready to?
Something to make that content come alive a bit more would be to provide examples of what that work looks like.
Yeah.
I'm going to be real. Before I ran for school board, I was like, okay. I get it. I get the job description, right? But really being in the work and doing the work, it looks and feels much more nuanced, obviously, than those bullet points. And so I think both of you would be able to give some really great specific examples of what that work looks like day to day.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I could talk to the work that we're doing on the policy monitoring committee, and Steve can speak to his work from, with the CFAC and the treasurer role, and really what that looks like from an actual physical activities perspective versus what like you said, the job description reads. And I think, and I wasn't at the school board candidate forum last time, yet here I am. But I would be curious, how much personal experience and input came during that, or if it was really just more kind of high level. Because I think for me, the personal side of things that Steve and Rhoda and I can present, I think will really provide a good context for people.
My memory of last time is that more personal stories came in during the Q&A at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think weaving them in throughout then could potentially make that Q&A even more impactful.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Well, we'll kind of, like I said, judge that up a little bit. Steve and I talked about this one. Number one, we're going to need an updated picture. But number two, look at Fartoon is so cute there. She's pregnant. We talked about, instead of talking about calendars and activities, what we talked about is really taking this and more making it a time commitment and expectations. There is a little bit of this outside preparation, but I think making this, because who knows what 1 to 2 board meetings a month means? Well, guess what, guys? That's like usually 4 to 5 hours in a boardroom with us, right? It's not an hour meeting. It's and the committee meetings and the community engagement. I think just really talking about what that looks like and feels like from a time commitment perspective is important for people to understand. And so I was going to kind of change this slide to more read, time commitment, and personal responsibilities. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's probably a good shift, but I would also maybe just talk about it more along the lines of a commitment.
Yeah, so we could do time commitment, and then here's the outside preparation. I would maybe say, like, maybe this is the commitment to the work slide or something like that. That is, I don't know. I wasn't sure about this slide. I'd be curious your guys' thoughts on this one.
I don't think that slide is bad. I think that there's a part to it, but that's a little vanilla in certain ways, because it's really about making sure that you're prepared to make the right decision. And it goes beyond just these 3 points.
Right. I mean, one of the things that we've done a lot more, right, is student engagement and enhancing student voice, and our community listening sessions, and our, listening sessions engaging our non-English speaking families. And I think a lot of that stuff would be included in this sort of outside preparation. Might make it less vanilla.
Agreed. And then I think there is a part of, in our lives, we do come in contact with a lot of people that have scholars that go to the school or community members that we get to know that ask us questions. And there is a certain amount of conversation that is had outside of the board table.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about organizing at least a portion of the slide deck in alignment with the board goals, then it would be really natural to continue to weave in that engagement piece that you're talking about. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
So one of the ways to frame this might be more the training that can be provided, because I don't want anyone to see this as a barrier to participation or running. And I think that there's a lot of supports that the district provides new and incoming board members. And I don't know if that's in a later slide, but I think that that stuff is pretty important for people to know that are thinking about running.
It's not really. There's some information here where there's the MSBA stuff. But yeah, I think that might be good to talk about additional support resources. Could be an interesting addition too, like that.
Like, I think back the MSBA training for new board members, I refer back to that all the time.
Yeah.
So really important for our prospective candidates to know that that's available. And then also our board works really hard to provide mentoring opportunities. So maybe mention that.
Perfect. I think this slide could be more easily conveyed in a piece of paper in the actual packet, unless this policy is crazy long. And I guess we should look at that. But if it's, 3 to 4 pages, I think we're better off putting this in the actual packet rather than just having this slide. But maybe it's in there for a reason I'm not seeing. I guess I don't know.
I don't know. I love looking at a policy on a screen.
There's something just so engaging about a hyperlink. No, I agree. So we'll sort of ixnay that slide most likely and create as a handout. I thought this one was funny. I'd be curious. I don't know that any of us are here for the stipend or for the free attendance at the district events. So I don't know what I sort of giggled. I mean, to me, it's more working with the team for transformational change and all of that, which I think we talk about a lot of that in our board goals and our community engagement and our student voice. And perhaps we talk about some of that more, the more tangible benefits of the stipend and the free participation. And maybe that's another insert to. So I didn't even know we got a stipend. Saw that. I was like, oh. Who knew? So I didn't know. I thought maybe a lot of this was sort of talked about earlier, but I'd be curious your guys' thoughts if we need a benefits of being a school board member slide.
Katie, can you share these slides with us just so that we can go over them after the meeting and we could possibly add whatever we feel needs to be changed?
Sure. I mean, they're going to be pretty dramatically changed, in my opinion. So what might work better is to have input once we have a new version of it, versus kind of a hands-on change of this. A lot of cooks in this kitchen. I think maybe we'll take the high-level changes and then we'll maybe do another quick run through at another board workshop, if that works.
That works. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. I'm happy to share this with you anyway, Tanya. I'll shoot it over to you. I just feel like if you make a lot of notes on this, it could be not the best use of your time.
No,
since it's going to change pretty
right,
dramatically.
I definitely didn't have any plans on making any notes within this document, just separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Perfect.
I think it would be good to keep a benefits slide, but maybe just tweak what they are.
Okay. Any other thoughts or emotions on the slide? Awesome. Obviously this will get updated, but I think this is very important. I wouldn't change much. I would keep it. I would update the dates. Are there any key dates you feel like that we're missing?
I think that when I was running, one of the things I missed was before the filing period, there were kind of community events that you could be involved in. Maybe you might want to list a couple of those.
Like what, Shannon?
I don't know. I'd have to think back. Feels like it was 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right.
But I can shoot you some examples.
Yeah, maybe go back and check your heart journal and see if you have any notes about special events.
I'll do that, Katie.
I liked this further information slide, although let's be honest, I don't think anybody's going to be clicking on these links. So I think, again, that packet, that handout that we give them is going to be really important. Unless we are sending these slides out, but I don't think we are. So again, hyperlinks in a presentation that they're not actually going to have, to me, feels not entirely. So I think we sort of just change this to a Q&A and then a reference to your packets, as well as, key contact information for who we want to have as the main point person for any questions that candidates might have. And I don't know, who would that be? Like Elise maybe, or one of us? Jolene? Like, you like how I'm voluntolding people?
I mean, I think usually what we do is direct the question to the most informed respondent. So I think questions can come in to Elise and board members, and then we'll just figure out, is this a finance question? Do we need to bring Director Chapanduka, or is it a board member question?
Okay.
We can be flexible.
So not really a point person, but rather a...
I think Elise could be the point person, but we'll just make sure we help connect the right person with each person's question.
Okay, and maybe this is a stupid question, but Elise, do you work in June, July, and August? Okay. Well, I didn't... So, I didn't know. I assumed so, but, sometimes when you don't ask the question, you make stupid mistakes. So that's the whole presentation.
Katie, can I ask whether it's okay that we mentioned that we're expected to write something in the Sun Sailor and that other newspaper, Minnesota, what was it? Was it Lakeshore or something?
Oh, the Lakeshore News? You mean like our candidate statements?
Yeah, because that was something that was surprising for me.
You know what we could add, Tanya, and that's a really good thought, is a campaign suggestion slide, right? I mean, I know when you look at the three of us, the four of us, right, we all campaigned very differently. And so I think each person is going to choose their things, but we could have a campaign suggestions or, slide like that talks about signs or postcards or Facebook or, and the statements that we made for the little news thing, and talk about all of those things as well. Because I think as evidenced by the number of people who stepped up for Chris Latondras' open spot, that perhaps the campaigning part is really what prevents a lot of community members from stepping forward to do this work and to run for school board. And so maybe if we talk about the campaign process and the ability to make it your own, and really to campaign in a way that feels authentic to you is key, and give them some suggestions on, resources that we all used.
By the way, the Lakeshore Weekly News no longer exists, so it's one less thing. But I would recommend, Katie, that we put a map of the district somewhere at the beginning of the presentation.
I like that. Okay.
And one that shows where the locations of our schools are. Because one of the things that always seems to come up is that people don't realize how big our district is. They maybe have a particular issue with their own kids' schools, but they don't realize how enormous our district is. And secondly, there's always some that shows up that realizes they don't live in the district. And that's a state law. So, just make it clear to them, if you don't live within these boundaries, you can't run. So,
right. I think that in our, maybe in our communication that we do on social media and in some of the principals' newsletters, we talk about requirements, which are live within district boundaries. Is there an age requirement over 18?
I'd need to check. I thought it was 21, but I'll go back. I can check that.
It is 21. I looked for Chris's spot.
Elliot, you sound like a robot.
May the fourth be with you.
Sorry, I said it is 21. I looked for Chris's spot, so.
Oh, Elliot. Awesome. I agree, Steve. So we'll add maybe a map of the district, talk through that, and then we'll add a slide for kind of campaign suggestions. I'm sure a lot of that will come up in Q&A too, but talk about some of the parts of campaigning that are, I wouldn't necessarily say required, but highly suggested and part of the effort. So.
Katie, maybe you said this at the beginning and I missed it because I've been struggling with my headset. That's a benefit, right? Is that you get to wear a sweet headset.
It is. We'll add that to the benefits slide.
Like Janet Jackson. Okay, so is the format going to be a Google Meet of the information session? I mean,
oh, how many people were at the last one, Rhoda? Do you know? I'm sure it was standing room only.
We had quite a few.
Maybe 20?
20. I think 20.
Could we do the auditorium? I would love to do it in person.
We could do it here. I don't think we'll have
so?
more than 25.
Yeah, I think we could.
Mhm.
I would like to do it in person. I always think, especially if you're going to do like a Q&A. I don't know. But we could also, record it, Jen, and then provide it. And then, maybe there's even the opportunity to have somebody like Steve or Ivor monitoring a Google form if there are questions that come in from people who are watching it remotely. So maybe we can do a hybrid format for that. I hadn't really thought about it, I guess, because I just really wanted it to be in person.
I do like the idea of a hybrid format. I think it makes it more accessible for folks. And then we can record it and put it on our school board page of the district website so people can access it later.
Yeah.
And then what do you think about making a PDF of the packet, the hard copy packet that you're going to hand out, and then we can link to that PDF right under the video, so it's all just right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea. The other thing was really just going to be promotion of this, but I think that's one thing that I've really seen Jolene and team really cover all the bases with lately as we have upped our communication game, I think, as a district through COVID and beyond. But, I think that the social media channels, I think they just have that really well, like it's a well-oiled machine. So I don't even know that we need to help them on that as far as promotion of this. I think we all share it on our personal pages if we have them or if we're comfortable with that. I think we ask for them to go in the principals' newsletters. And I think as long as they go on our parents' Facebook pages and Instagram and whatnot, I think that really should cover us.
And maybe the Sun Sailor as well as the City of Hopkins newsletter.
Yeah, and what is it? Oh, the one that goes up in Golden Valley is the Sun Post. So, all right. Anything else that you guys feel like I missed? I can't believe that took 33 minutes. Sorry.
Oh, that was great. Thank you for taking lead, Katie and Steve. Really appreciate it. Any last comments on this agenda item before we move on? Wonderful. Well, last week, which feels a little bit strange to say because we're typically used to having our meetings every 2 weeks, but because of the change in schedule, here we are again. So last week, we spent some time during our workshop learning about evolutions at the elementary level. And tonight we get to learn more about secondary program transformation. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry Reid.
Thank you so much, Chair Bouchard, and I'm really pleased to have our guests with us this evening. So good evening to board members and our community members who are listening. And as you said, Chair, last week we focused on evolutions in some of our elementary programming. We had our Director of IDL with us, Ann Erdl, Assistant Director Schmisek, and our two principals, Principal Ness and Principal Nolan. And this evening, we're going to focus on junior high programming, in addition to some thinking and planning, lots of thinking and planning, actually. We're also checking in with our families through the comprehensive survey that has already garnered more than 1,500 responses. And, we really are thinking deeply and thinking broadly because our previous normal did not work for all students. And so we are compelled to think creatively, to be future forward in our thinking, as well as capitalize on everything that we've learned about our scholars and about ourselves and about our system this year. So, for example, at both of our junior highs, we still have families continuing to elect into full-time distance learning, and a mid-year survey indicated that more than 200 junior high families were somewhat or very interested in continuing full-time distance learning for next year. With respect to distance learning, we uncovered a really amazing data point in that our Hispanic and Latinx, Black and African American, and students of two or more races raised their GPAs substantially while in distance learning. They even made larger gains than in previous years and when compared to their white peers. So how might we continue to facilitate online and blended learning next year for students who feel comfortable in those environments? Also, through our student board reports and some of the data we've been collecting from students, our secondary scholars have shared that they really enjoy the flexibility of online and hybrid learning. They've gained a stronger sense of independence, agency, a greater ability to be more self-directed in their learning. And so we want to design experiences that empower our scholars to continue growing in these important areas. So we're really trying to be thoughtful with what our scholars need, what our staff are able to deliver, and what Vision 2031 calls us to do. So I'm really pleased to have our interim director of IDL with us this evening, along with our junior high leaders, our esteemed leaders, Principal Leanne Camphy and Principal Julius Aromaselli. And we are going to focus on junior high programming and our current thoughts for next year as we take a look at that survey data that's rolling in on a daily basis now. So thanks very much, team, for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary Perry Reid. Good evening, board members, and good evening to everybody who's listening in. So as Dr. Mary Perry Reid said, we are going to be focusing in on junior high. I am going to share my screen. Give me one moment. Okay, can everybody see it? Is it up?
Looks good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as with last week, as Chair Bouchard noted, we last week focused on elementary, and this week we are focusing on junior high. As we described last week, we have been sharing a lot of information about our predictable staffing model and how this model allows for principals to do planning with their teachers to create and enhance programs to do just what Dr. Mary Perry Reid was describing and really meet the needs of scholars. So in this presentation, we are going to hear about some of the shifts that Principals Camphy and Aromaselli are working on with their leadership teams and aligned to our Vision 2031 Hopkins Learning Framework. Some of the overall themes that you will hear about are scholar voice. We know that we want to listen to the voices of our scholars and of our caregivers in terms of designing programs and also designing learning experiences that will yield us the graduate traits of our Hopkins Scholar, community school, and personalized and blended learning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Principal Aromaselli to talk about the work that he has been engaging in with the leadership team at North Junior High.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board, community members, and esteemed colleagues. It is an honor to be here with you this evening. This is a great privilege to be sitting here. And before I get started, I want to, for our colleagues, teacher colleagues who are watching from home, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. None of these conversations happening right now would be happening or even being had without all the work you have done. This year has been an incredibly difficult year in many ways, and you have all stepped up and really carried our work in this great difficulty and in a dual pandemic year. I am so honored to be walking alongside you all. So to kind of jump into what we are doing at North, this is my first year at Hopkins North Junior High. And first I want to touch on the fact that in taking this role, one thing I immediately realized when I arrived at North is the great level of engagement that our teachers have with the work that exists here at North. There is a foundation that has been established at North due to our IB program and just in the level of work all of our teachers put in on a daily basis. There were a number of teacher leader teams that already existed at North, like our operations team and our BUILT, which is our building instructional leadership team, that I as a leader was immediately able to tap into. And this was incredibly critical for me as a new leader, because what it allowed me to do is step into a role that already had people with brilliant minds and brilliant thoughts that were already at the table that could help me understand the path we had been walking on and what the next steps needed to be. And so through IB and through the conversations and the collaboration between our leadership team and our teacher leaders, we have made great strides this year. We've come to a lot of realizations about the difficulty that this year has brought forth for many of our scholars and our teachers, and realizing that education needs to be more than just the articulated numbers and the facts. There is a human element that it needs to exist in education that is often overlooked. And in order to have our scholars fully 2031 ready and be the whole human being and have every part of them affirmed, we needed to reimagine and look at education a little bit differently. And so that is kind of how we approached our work this year. And we saw this year as an opportunity to truly think outside of the box. There's no better time to think differently and to do differently than when everything seems to be falling apart around you. So the parts all seem to be available, even though they seem to be on the ground. We pick them up and we stack them back up. And that's what we're trying to do. And our teachers have been amazing in it, and they've had amazing ideas and have been critical to this work. And if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, so right off the bat, our team and our BUILT and our ops team identified the needs to create an equitable educational approach that highlighted the unique talents of each of our scholars. As I mentioned, scholars will often ask you, what is the point of what I'm learning? And we as adults often struggle to answer this very simple question, right? But the true answer in that is to truly help them connect what they are learning to who they are now, right? Often we are too forward thinking and thinking we have to answer a question that is 15 and 10 years or 20 years down the line. But the fact is, if we affirm who they are now, even if they're 13, 14, 12-year-olds, the fact is their lived experience are still relevant now. Our kids deal with so much. And so our educational experience at North and across our district needs to be representative of that. There is a cultural truth that every kid brings to the table that needs to be seen in the classroom by our teachers and by our leaders. And that is what we are trying to do by moving towards personalized learning. So what allowed us to begin to move towards personalized learning? This year, the junior highs moved towards IB scoring, which really goes beyond just scoring the work, but scores the progress of a scholar. It keeps in mind where they have started and where they're going and the effort that is being put into that. And so from that standpoint, there is an intense amount of rigor and self-expectation that a scholar has to put into the work. IB has really helped us to help build our scholars' confidence and to help embrace a worldview, understanding that the classroom is made up of not just themselves, but others who may think and view the world differently than them. And that in of itself enriches the experience of the education in the classroom. So that is what we have been building on this school year. And our BUILT team explored opportunities available through blended learning as a way of facilitating this kind of learning. So when we think of this idea of, having blended learning help us to drive our personalized learning work, we are going from not just gifted and talented for a handful of kids, but gifted and talented for all of our kids. Because we believe that all our scholars are inherently gifted and talented, and it is our job to cultivate that genius within all of them. And so that is the work we have really thrown ourselves into this year, and our teachers have been at this tip of the spear in that work. Our build team set a vision to move personalized learning to an intentional school-wide approach facilitated through our blended learning approach. And this spring, because we realized we needed to start moving pretty quickly to plan for next school year, we created what we call our Swift Action Team, SWAT, and we've been meeting weekly. And this has a team member of about 10 to 12 teachers that work with our administrative team to plan and send out surveys and evaluate what our teachers feel are important things that need to be covered in order for us to start moving towards this personalized learning model in the next couple of years. And this has been a great learning experience for me as a new leader. And it feels deeply rewarding and enriching. And I hope it will have the same effect for our scholars. And as families begin to really see that the eyes and the way kids view education start to lighten up when they realize that when I step into the classroom, someone cares what I think about it. Someone cares that I have an opinion about it. And that means that our teachers are now co-facilitators and co-learners with our scholars. And so this is something that it's the rising tide lifts all boats idea, rather than just, that boat over there is really nice and is doing really well, but rather we all can do better when we all do better. So thank you. There's one more slide, I believe. So this is sort of what we envision here at North, is the idea that scholars will still have some level of, because we understand all our scholars learn differently, so there will be various opportunities for scholars to learn in small groups, large groups, independent working groups, and it would allow for our special education teachers, our EL teachers, to push into these areas and to give kids exactly what they need at any particular time. We are looking to move away from a traditional way of viewing education and how education should be delivered. This takes away the idea that the teacher is always the expert, because the truth of the matter is there's no bigger expert in my life than me. I live it every day, and I know what it means to me and how it impacts me. And if I am allowed to bring that truth into the classroom and share that with my classmates, and that enriches their life, and their stories enrich mine, and there is a growing and that grows the appreciation that we have for each other. And in conversations I've had with incoming sixth grade families, the one thing they always think about is, I want my kid to feel like they belong, and I want them to be prepared for the future that I want them to have. And the world is not a monolith, right? There are various ideas out there, and we have to expose our kids on a smaller scale to these different ideas and allow them to wrestle with it now, so that when they get out there, they're not wrestling publicly in a way that is, scary or detrimental to their growth, whether professionally or personally. So I think there is a great opportunity here, and I am so thankful to our teachers here at North who are on this journey with me, and our leadership team. And I thank you for the support from the IDL team and Dr. Reid and the cabinet. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Principal Aramasali. And just before I introduce Principal Camphy, board members and community members, in case you think you're experiencing deja vu, we actually did share a slide just like this last week when we talked about elementary. And that's because the idea of personalization is something that we will be testing across our system. We are already testing it now, and we'll continue to test it at the elementary and secondary levels next year, because this is part of the Hopkins learning framework. It is something that will be common across the system as we look for ways to create opportunities for deep conceptual learning for our scholars, no matter which grade level they're at. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Principal Camphy, who is going to talk about the work that she has done with her leadership teams around the community school concept.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you to all of you for having me here tonight. And I just want to echo Principal Romasilli's thanks to our teachers. It's an important week for all of our staff. I really think anyone that works with a child is a teacher, and we appreciate them so much. About 3 years ago, I was about to finish my first year as a principal, which was one of the most difficult years of my life, and certainly the most difficult year of my career. And in the summer of 2018, as I was finishing a 4-day restorative practice training with many of my staff members, we were talking about the future that we envisioned. And I remember saying and feeling a little, a little audacious, that what I wanted was for us to create a revolution. And then we started to kind of like play off of that. And what I'm really excited to say is that last week I shared what our leadership teams have been working on with our staff. And I think that everybody's ready to do just that, which is bold to say. But it's very, very exciting. And we have been on quite a journey over the last 4 years. But I really think, I said it today to the focus group that I was working with, getting some more feedback on the ideas that we are the people to do it if it is going to be done. And Hopkins is the place where it could happen. So thank you again. I'm just grateful to be here. And if you want to move to the next slide, that would be great. So like I said, we have been working on a school vision since 2018, which was the second half of my first year as principal. That summer, our building instructional leadership team came up with a vision using a process similar to what the district used with Go-Kart. And we ideated around what our ideal school would be, the place we would want to work, the place we would want to send our children, and the place that we envisioned everyone would want to be. And we saw that having 4 pillars. The foundation of our school would be a place where students explore their passions, students feel ownership, students and teachers collaborate, and the culture is restorative. In the fall of 2018, as part of our IB work, we revised our mission statement, which reads, "We are a welcoming community. We embrace an individual kindness as empowered learners who create a better world." That same fall, we gathered family and staff feedback about different school models to explore. And one that resonated in both spaces was the community school model. Traditionally, you may know a community school is a place that is seen as the hub of the community where students, families, and staff can gather to have multiple needs met, including both academic and social emotional. There are often community supports such as social work or health services that are incorporated into such a model. As we moved forward into 2019, in the fall and the winter of last year, we continued to gather additional stakeholder feedback from students, families, and staff about the pillars of our vision. So we started to use some principles of improvement science to build those out, taking the driving ideas that our teams had identified to make our vision a reality. COVID slowed our work a bit, but our team did continue to learn together during the spring and summer of 2020. Following the murder of George Floyd, our staff expressed a desire to engage more explicitly in work to prevent bias in education. And this coincided with our realization of the many innovative ways we had learned to engage students during the pandemic-induced distance learning that occurred from March to June of 2020. And you can go ahead and move to the next slide. And that led us to this moment of thinking about 2 possibilities. We had already identified that we wanted the culture of our school to be restorative. And so we were thinking about, does that mean we should be looking at a restorative school concept? But we also had started to think about something called emancipatory education. And the idea behind emancipatory education is that education is liberatory, that students have agency, that they come to school to solidify their identity, to use their voice, and to take what they learn and go and change the world to make it a better place. That they aren't vessels for knowledge to be deposited into, but that they are there to co-create knowledge and collaborate with the other humans in that space. And so when we started to learn about the budgetary challenges that were going to be placed in front of us earlier this school year, I decided to lead the leadership teams through a process that began in January. And we started talking about different forms of blended learning and lots of different things, but I didn't want the conversation solely to be about the financial piece. I wanted our identity to really be driving what we were going to do. And so about a month ago, our two leadership teams, our operations and our built, were having our final meeting to get to the point of what is the model we're going to propose to our staff. And I posed the question to them of, does it feel like we've landed at a place where we are more leaning towards a restorative school identity or an emancipatory education identity? Or does it seem like maybe we're somewhere in the middle? Maybe we're both. And it was a resounding yes, that we are somewhere in the middle, that it's really a combination of the two. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so then as I was talking with my brilliant colleague, Matthew Johnson, our assistant principal, we were talking about, well, I don't know what we would call that. And he said, well, why isn't it a community school? And I thought, that's brilliant, because what we are trying to do is create the community that we want to see in the world. So that's our goal, is for West Junior High to be a place where we are teaching our students and together with them, creating a new community that is within our four walls, but also transcending our four walls to make the world a better place. The learning will be personalized. So what you heard Principal Romaselli talk about, we are also looking at a flexible learning model similar to that. We will continue to use our IB framework. So the learning will be conceptual, which will allow it to be transferable. It will ensure that every student's knowledge matters, because we all understand change at some level. That's why conceptual learning is so important. We will absolutely continue to develop our restorative culture that we have been working on for the last several years. And we will add this new layer of thinking about everything through the lens of emancipatory practices, which could be as simple as whatever we discuss, we ask the question, who does it help? Who does it harm? Why is it the way it is? And how can I change it or be a part of it? So that's what we're thinking about. Our next steps are to start getting some family feedback on this, and then also get some student feedback. We have had student feedback along the way, but now that we've got a more clear idea, we're ready to take that forward to our students and families in the next month. That's what we plan to do, and then revise and start to create the professional development experiences that will help our staff begin to implement. And we plan to start with small steps. I think I actually said to staff that it's like not even small steps. It's like when the baby first moves its hand forward to try to crawl, or maybe lifts its head even in the fall, so that no one gets overwhelmed after a year and a half of a pandemic. But we are going to move forward, and it is going to be something amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Principal Camphy and Principal Aramaselli. I would invite any questions from any board members at this time.
Chair Bouchard?
Yes, Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation. It was really exciting, and as a parent of a Hopkins Junior High student, it feels really timely and exciting for me. One of the things that I have been struggling with understanding, and if someone could just give me a quick definition, what do you mean when you say blended learning?
There's different models So I think probably the two of us should each speak as to how we're thinking of it looking in our individual buildings. At West, we explored a number, and where we landed was with a flex model. And so essentially that means that there would be rotations. So what we really liked was the idea that whenever students are with their primary teacher, there is not lecture. The time that the teacher is with students is not for dissemination of information or for students to be consuming information, because students can do that in many other ways. Rather, the time with the primary teacher is for the teacher to be facilitating conversation or helping to clarify understanding. And so the inquiry part of learning, where students are exploring and trying to gain their own understanding, could be done independently. And the teacher might create that, and we might use our learning management system for the students to do that exploration, but there also might be other resources through which the students could do that exploration. But then what we're thinking about is how do we divide students into small groups? And then they would be able to rotate through. What we liked about the flex model is that the rotation could be prescribed. So it could be based upon student need, and it could be in a certain order sequenced to best support the student, all the way to completely student driven and anywhere in between. And so one of our steps for the meeting that I have scheduled with my operations team on Friday is to start to think about what does the gradual release or the scaffolding of that look like? At what point do we decide that a student could completely drive their path versus they need to have that path be more prescribed? And then the other thing that we really want to make happen at West, that's going to be a key component of our model, is we don't want to lose, as students are dividing into these smaller groups, we don't want that to result in some unintended consequences like tracking. We do want our students always to come back together. And so what we're thinking about is, if the learning is always conceptual and students are pursuing those concepts at whatever level they are, at whatever understanding they have, they can always come back and discuss their understanding of those concepts together. And so we're thinking about different circle protocols that could be used to do that. So we've been using a lot of Frerian cultural circles this year as staff. So that's one of the protocols we would use. Socratic seminar is another protocol that we could use. So the idea would be you could explore individually. You might then use active ways of assessment after having discussion as a large group to show what you know. So that's how we're interpreting blended, is that there's some independent learning technology could be a piece of that. Independent learning technology could be a piece of how you show your learning, but the majority of the learning in a flex model is done in person.
So my answer is quite similar to what Dr. Kempfe just mentioned. So in our model that we are thinking of running, we are looking to have 2 or more of our teachers working collaboratively, that which allows our scholars to select which teacher they would like to engage with at any particular time of the day. As adults, we know our strengths, right? And I am not a morning person. I do make it in the morning, but I am not a morning person. So, I personally would not select a math lesson for myself first thing in the morning. So what this allows our scholars to do when we have teachers from multiple learning areas paired together is a scholar could select to, I will do my social studies engagement in the morning. I will engage with that in the morning, do some of the small group things in the middle, and I will engage with my math teacher maybe around 10 o'clock today during the big block lesson that is occurring later. So it gives that scholar some choice on when to engage with things. And what that does is it allows some of our teachers, say in special ed, in EL, to be able to be in the classroom and be more responsive to when kids are going to need things, right? And so they're not pinned down to, well, this kid only has third block. And so because they have third block, if I'm not available third block, I just can't help them. What this allows them to do is engage with the kid and say, hey, when are you thinking of engaging with math today? I would like to be there for you. And so if the kid is like, fourth hour would be great. And then the teacher says, I will be there fourth hour to be in the classroom with you so that we can run through the things that you need. And so those kids, every kid gets what they need. And so for the scholars who want to move ahead and continue to push forward with their learning because they feel like they're comfortable enough in their learning and their understanding to continue to push the envelope, the teacher is able to maybe break out a smaller group with those scholars and show them what is next and what their thinking should be engaging with at the next level. And so kids get to have a little bit of what they all want, all simultaneously. And as Principal Camphy said, whether it's through technology in small groups or in large groups, this can all happen. And I think that's the beauty of this. And I think for me, it creates a collaborative atmosphere in our classrooms amongst our staff and with our scholars as well, and the scholars and teachers. And so there is this collaborative learning and cognitively busy space that exists in the classroom when scholars are able to engage in this way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that response, and in particular addressing the students with special needs. I was wondering how blended learning could support and elevate their academic experience as well. Sounds like a much more inclusive environment than we're used to. I'm also wondering, has there been any exploration around blended learning in maybe diffusing grade bands a little bit, creating more flexibility within that, and also as a way to foster and promote peer-assisted learning?
Director Andreessen, I just want to respond to that. And then, of course, I will let Principals Campy and Aramaselli talk about junior high. And I know that our focus is junior high, but I wanted to just share with everybody that I attended a meeting last evening with Principal Reid and Glen Lake parents, and we were talking about exactly that topic, about sort of refuting the notion that learning and development is always tied to a child's age and that it is more progressive in nature. And so that your question really resonated with me. Thank you for asking that.
When the team at West was in our brainstorming phase, so that was probably back in February before we were feeling the need to maybe tie down to some details so that we could tell staff a plan. There was quite a bit of talk about exactly that. I don't know if we'll land there next fall right away, but that is for sure on the horizon. That is one of the things we liked about that flex model, was the idea that when we get to the point of everybody fully understanding it, that is exactly the route we would go. And there were teachers talking about there not needing to be specific classes or courses, but that it more could be a sequence of learning through a subject area, and that students could move through as they were ready. We do have in our 7th grade design class this term, the teachers are piloting a personalized learning model just like that, where students have learning targets and they're moving at their own pace. So that gives us a very small example of how you could make that work. And then we would just have to take that to scale to make it work across grade bands.
And likewise, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thanks.
Likewise at North, these are all conversations we're having about how to really scale this, in trying to begin this incremental and intentional work. We are very aware of the various we are trying to be very aware of the various aspects that end up playing into things. The conversation our team has had is being careful, right? Thinking of the dandelion effect, and I've shared this with Anne, when you want to dismantle racism and create something that is anti-racist, you could unintentionally sprout another dandelion, which is also racist, if you are not careful. And as our team has worked, we have tried to be very intentional in our planning, and that's why we are looking at all the possibilities. So, and the idea that all scholars have inherent geniuses in them, And I know that is why you asked that question, because we need to foster that in all of our scholars across the board. And it should be inclusive in that work. And so that is something we are very honed in on and trying to figure out a way to scale that and make it building wide. And that is part of our work over the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Director Cool.
So over the last couple of weeks, we have heard some feedback from parents that have heard from some teachers that they still have some concern of how exactly they're going to be able to execute the blended learning model. Can you share just a little bit more of how you are addressing the immediate concerns of some of those staff that may not be talking directly to you with that for different reasons? And then how are we going to address that ongoing once you start executing this piece?
I can answer first on this one. So I think the important piece when, as we take, because as a building, right, and as a leader and as a teaching staff, we are taking risks, and it's important that we take risks so that our kids can stop taking risks every day in the classroom. They need to be comfortable. They need to feel like they belong. And so we will have to deal with some level of discomfort on our parts in order for them to feel comfort. And that is the work we're doing. What I have done and our team continues to do is engage with our teachers and working specifically and all decision-making going through teacher leaders teams. Nothing is done in isolation. Certainly ideas are shared and perspectives are shared. I have a shared lived experience, and so do our teachers. And when ideas are becoming are shared in groups and teachers and leaders are working through them, we then bring them forth and share them with the larger staff, and then collect data around that and what concerns may be, and then we take it back and make more adjustments. We do realize that when you are doing something that is transformational, you ought to be careful, and there has to be a common and understood goal that needs to be accomplished when you pick out a dragon to slay, so to speak. And the dragon we need to slay right now is that idea and that spirit of only some kids deserve a good education and some inherently are okay just being failed. And we can no longer allow that dragon to live in our midst. I have, when I came on board, I asked our staff, how are the children? And that is a question I often ask them, because we need to constantly ask ourselves, how are the children? And if we can comfortably say, the children are well, then we have no more work to do. But until we are able to say, not all of the children are well, some of them still need us, then we have to wrestle with the things we have to as adults, but collectively, not individually, because none of us can do this by ourselves. I cannot do this without our teachers, and our teachers require us to all bind together and to be marching forward collectively in our vision and in our efforts to do what is right by our kids. So, we are going to continue to reach out to our teachers. This year, as we have done staffing, the IDL team and the district have made funds available for us to engage in coaching in our building, which we have then directed those coaching funds towards supporting this work. And in hiring these coaches, these are teacher leaders within the building to help their own colleagues. So it's really given the power and saying, here are people you trust and you work with collectively and in close proximity with for years, and they can be the ones who walk alongside you while I also support to do this work. So there is an incredible level of transparency that exists in the work we are doing, and continuous conversation and openness to all of that. And so I just wanted to share that a little bit, and this is something as a leader I am very mindful of and realize it's integral and important if this is to be done well.
Director Adams, I saw you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bouchard. I'll put this to the two principals and to Ann. I sense a sense of apprehension among some of our parents that we're moving into this new learning model, this blended learning, and like it's revolutionary and has never been tried before. And could you tell us what's the research on this? Has it been tried before? Have you witnessed it going on anywhere? And just share that experience with us.
I would imagine that Anne can speak to this in detail, but blended learning has been around for, I believe, over 20 years. So it's been around in school districts around the country, perhaps around the world. I don't know the research deeply enough to say that for sure, but so yes, there is research to show that it works. I think that we always want that, and I think that's fair to ask for that. And my response would be that it kind of goes back to what Board Member Kuhl asked. And it was what I said to my staff earlier today when I was talking to some in a focus group, that when we do something new, it is scary and we don't know if it will work. And what we do know right now is that what we do right now and what we have been doing does not work for all children. And what I really need us to get comfortable with is the fact that we've been okay with it not working for a whole group of students. If that was okay, then when we're going to try something new that we really believe might work for that group of students that have been left to the side, then we also have to be just as okay if there might be some other students while we figure that out. And that isn't me saying any student doesn't matter. It's me saying we can't lie to ourselves about the fact that there's always been students that we haven't been able to reach. And so while we try to figure something out that we believe has the potential to reach all students, we have to step away from our perfectionist tendencies and quit believing that there's any possibility of it being perfect immediately, or maybe even ever, and be willing to try. So we need to be willing to try, then we need to be willing to pause and say, what's working? Let's keep doing that. Now let's try the next thing that we think is going to be the next best step. Okay, let's pause. Now let's see what the next best step is. And I think that we want finite answers of this will be the thing, and now we will have fixed it, and then we will be done, and no one will ever have to look at educational reform again. And if anybody had ever been able to do that, we wouldn't be having the conversation we're having right now. So it's not that I don't want to seem that I'm being dismissive of the question. It's not that. It's just that I think no one has solved it. And Hopkins has some of the most brilliant people that I've ever known. And we have been given the freedom to really try to solve it in ways that I've never seen. And so I think that we have to be brave right now, and we have to be willing to try, and then we have to be willing to own it if we make a mistake and something doesn't work, and go back to the drawing board and try again.
Thank you. Well, and I have to say that some of this in respects reminds me of a school that's on Angle Inlet in northern Minnesota on Lake of the Woods. It's the last remaining one-room schoolhouse in Minnesota. And first graders are sitting there learning stuff from the sixth graders. And there is blended learning taking place there. So in many ways, it is reminiscent of that. So thank you, Luann.
So I've been having a really hard time containing my excitement, and so I'm just going to let it all out right here at this workshop, that this is the work, and I am so here for it. And I'm listening to you from the perspective of a community college educator. I have been teaching at my dream job at Normandale Community College for 12 years now. And during that time, I've had the privilege of working with so many different types of students from so many different backgrounds. And every semester, there is a group of students in each of my classes who have been failed by their E12 educational experience. And these are the students that we've been talking about tonight. And I spend so much time and energy, and my time and energy doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is that they are so socialized into following the rules, into being super anxious about points, like what points are associated with this assignment. And I'm like, I don't know. We're going to have a discussion about this, and I'm going to say something. You're going to push back on me because what I'm saying probably isn't right, and you're bringing your own cultural truth, as Principal Romaselli said, into this space. And I need to see how that intersects with my cultural truth. And they're not equipped. Like they aren't able to do that work that is so essential to our work in the post-secondary context. And so what we need, it's not an exaggeration to say we need a revolution, because we have been failing these students who then become adults and come into my classroom, and they have been receiving these messages from systems and from people that they are not gifted and that they are not talented, and that is exactly how they are showing up in these classes. And it's not, I don't have enough time in a semester to undo 13 years of socialization, and I wish I did. And I'm coming off of a teaching experience this afternoon that just drove that home for me. And so the only way that we can solve this is by starting early and by doing this work now. And I think, the points that have been made tonight, that some of this is revolutionary. A lot of it's not. Like, a lot of it has been done, right? And it's been done really well, as Principal Camphy said, for decades, right? The blended learning. But what is revolutionary is the approach that you are bringing as leaders to this work. How centered you are in the experiences of the communities at your school. And by that, I mean our educators, our students, and our families, and our caregivers, and really keeping them at the center of every decision that's being made, and keeping them looped in and truly doing this work in a collective manner. Any of us who have been around education for a long time know that it's really easy to read a new theory and get super excited about it. And then you bring it to your department meeting and this is the thing we're doing, everybody get on board, right? But that is not the best way to advance the work. To advance the work, it has to be done exactly how you articulated it tonight, intentionally, in solidarity, finding spaces to grapple with those really hard truths, and owning the mistakes, right? Part of why I believe that we need this revolution is that we're so socialized in education to get it right. Don't make a mistake. And that stymies all of this creativity and all of this energy that our scholars naturally bring into our spaces. I obviously could talk about this for the next hour. I'm going to stop myself now. But I just am I'm going to have a hard time sitting here for another hour and a half. I feel like running around because I'm just so energized by this workshop and by the work that you all have done this year in the midst of a pandemic, looking at those pieces, as Principal Aromaselli said, seeing what's there, and what can we build together coming out of this year. Thank you.
Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Dr. Mary Perry Reid.
I just want to echo your thank you and just speak directly to our leaders as well. I personally am very excited about the newer approaches we are taking to scholars learning. But I think what is on my mind right now is that if we think about our adolescents and the quality of the lives they have and lead during adolescence, the journeys can be torturous. The journeys can be very painful. And what I think is most important is that Dr. Camphy and Principal Aromaselli are thinking about how to create space for our adolescents to truly belong and to find themselves while they are in junior high school, because that journey of finding yourself starts when you're 12 and 13 years old. And so the two of you are creating conditions and a school culture where our adolescents will be able to find themselves. And I'm so appreciative of that, because that social, emotional, and that relational foundation is the most important thing. And then on top of that, of course, we're going to cultivate excellent academic learning opportunities. But I'm most grateful for your sense of duty to help our children feel that they belong and that they know who they are and they can speak their truth in their classroom and school environments. So thank you to both of you, and thanks, Director Ertl, for facilitating the conversation.
Thank you.
Any additional board member comments or questions before we take a break? I didn't mean for my excitement to derail the the protocol. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for sharing all of this wisdom and planning with us. And we'll look forward to the next conversation for sure, and supporting this work in the year to come. Years, plural.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board members, let's take a 4-minute break, and I'll see you back here at 7 o'clock for our meeting. Okay, we can get started. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is called to order at 7:02 p.m. I'm Chair Jen Bouchard, and I'd like to welcome all of our community members who are joining us via the YouTube live stream. And I would like my board colleagues to just confirm that you're here in the call for the benefit of our public. So Director Adams.
Here.
Director Ahmed.
Here.
Vice Chair Andreessen.
Here.
Director Khan.
Here.
Director Kuhl.
Here.
Director Peterson.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. So our first agenda item is open agenda. Normally during this time, we would take public comment. We have two options for submitting public comment. You can either leave a voicemail and then have that voicemail played publicly at the next meeting. Information on how to do that is available in each board packet, or you can come to our meeting in person and submit public comment during that time. We have received no voicemails for public comment this evening, and we don't have anyone in our in-person audience this evening. It's a little bit lonely. So I'm so sorry. We have two fabulous staff members in our in-person public this evening. I did not mean to offend, certainly within the first 2 minutes of the meeting. I apologize. So we don't have any public comments tonight, unless our two fabulous audience members we're planning to make one. So with that, we will move on to our reports, and we'll start with our student board representatives report, and I'll turn it over to our cohort coordinator, Elliot Berman.
Do I sound like a robot or am I good?
You do. I mean, it's kind of cool, but if you have options, we could explore those.
I will try to fix it and pass it on to Kimura right now.
All right. Kimura, welcome.
Hi, I'm Kimura, everyone. So I'm going to start off with academics. Tomorrow marks the first AP test of the season, which is exciting. I have my AP test on Thursday. So this week is also midterms, meaning this Thursday is term 4 conferences, and the end of the year is just right around the corner. We have 18 school days left, which is exciting as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. So happy you're here. Any board member questions or comments for Kimura? How many days left do we have?
18 days.
Oh my gosh. Time feels very strange this year. I don't know if you're experiencing that as well, but 18 days. Wow, we are really nearing the end here. Thank you, Kimura. Elliot, you sound much better now.
Yes, I attempted to fix it, but just took them out entirely. Yes, we have 18 school days left. It is exciting. Other things that are going on in the high school, the Royals varsity baseball team is 6-5 this season, and they have a game tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. against Buffalo, who they lost to by 1 run earlier this year. So it's looking to be a good game. NHS, National Honor Society, participated in a spring cleanup event on Saturday, May 1st, hosted by the Senior Community Services. Members were out about and around the community, picking up trash to make our surroundings a little bit nicer as the days get longer, weather gets warmer, and people can be outside. Yesterday, Monday, May 3rd, was Decision Day at Hopkins High School. Seniors gathered and distanced at the high school yesterday to take pictures with each other in their college gear, or just to celebrate what they're doing next year after they graduate. And prom tickets are on sale through the end of the week. Seniors need to go buy them by Friday. That is the last day you can buy them, as well as seniors need to order caps and gowns and select their graduation time. There will be 2 graduations, one at 10 a.m. and one at 1 p.m. And seniors need to go grab all their stuff and get ready because it is coming up quick and fast. And it's scary, but we're here. We're at this moment after the year it's been. So thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Any questions or comments for Elliot?
Yes, Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Director Adams.
I'd like to know what Elliot's plans are, what decision he made regarding his goals for next year.
Currently, right now, I am headed to the University of Minnesota, but I am considering actually going over across the pond to a UK school. I came across this service called Across the Pond. Actually, it is a free a service that they try to get United States students to go over to England and enroll in UK universities. So it's free application fees, free everything. So I really recommend if people are kind of still don't know what they want to do, juniors now, rising seniors, go check that out. Go use the service. They give you an advisor and everything, and it's a really cool experience to do. So University of Minnesota now, but might be switching it.
In your across the pond search, are you looking for a school that's got a swimming team?
I not across the pond, but at the U, I'd walk on the team and hopefully swim through my college years.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, student board reps. Next, we'll move to our superintendent's report with Dr. Mary Perry Reid.
Thank you so much, Chair Bouchard, and congratulations, Elliot, on your college selection, but also your other choice there. It's really great to have multiple choices. I'm going to share my screen, and so please let me know. Oops, I'm pressing the wrong thing here. Can you see the screen okay? Oh, great. Okay, well, I just wanted to share with our community and board members that earlier today was a very exciting day because from 12:30 to 1:30, we welcomed distinguished guests to Hopkins Public Schools. So Governor Waltz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and Commissioner Heather Mueller joined us on the Alice Smith campus. Many thanks to Eduardo Navidad, proud principal, for hosting, as well as Jolene Goldati and her team for coordinating. We also had Early Learning Director Sarah Chovan to signal the importance of early learning and a focus on preschool. Vice Chair Andreessen was also present, as well as were many teachers and scholars. The journalists from the major news networks were also there. So it was a really great event. And our scholars were really, really excited to rub shoulders with and play kickball with their governor. He had lots of fun on that playground. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, as our junior high principals noted in their comments earlier during the board workshop. And in Hopkins, we really do love our teachers. We are indebted to our Hopkins educators, as it's been a very challenging school year. They have definitely gone above and beyond the call of duty and supporting our scholars socio-emotionally as well as academically and in many other ways. In the survey that we recently sent to families and caregivers, one parent shared, "Engaged teachers have made all the difference for my kids." So thanks to all of our teachers. Please help me recognize Lane Bell. She is a teacher at Hopkins High School in the Hopkins Achievement Program and is one of 9 finalists for the 2021 Minnesota Teacher of the Year. Ms. Bell uses the core value of love to connect with and impact her scholars' lives. So congratulations to Ms. Bell, and we look forward to hopefully her winning the Teacher of the Year award. I wanted to share with our board members and community members that we did recently send a very comprehensive survey to our families, to our staff, and today to our 6th through 12th grade scholars. The survey asks respondents to rate the quality of their experiences this year, to help us understand what they've learned about themselves and their learning during this pandemic year, and also what they're hoping for next year. So to date, we have 352 responses from staff, which is a really great response rate, and more than 560 responses from families. We are planning to use responses to further inform our planning for next year. And you know that there's been lots of talk about summer programming, so we are underway with our planning. We know that high quality summer enrichment opportunities can provide learning continuity for our pre-K through age 21 scholars, as well as help mitigate summer learning loss and even accelerate scholar learning. We're hoping to expand and broaden our programming this summer to tap into students' strengths, to help students develop positive relationships with adults and their peers, and also to help our scholars increase their academic confidence in their thinking and in their leadership. So this slide, you'll see a myriad of programs and opportunities that we're planning for our scholars. The Innovation, Design, and Learning Department recently hired Paris Timmons, a teacher from North Junior High, to assume the role of Summer Learning Coordinator, and we're really excited about her being in that role, and also about the recommendations that we received from the Reimagine Summer Learning Task Force that will be used to inform our programming. So all of this has been really positive news, hopefully, including, and I know we do have a number of individuals and scholars who are out on quarantine. However, the number of positive cases per 10,000 people tested in Hennepin County is now back on the decline, and we want to express continued appreciation for our COVID management team that meets every morning to check in on positive cases or engage with MDH phone calls, talk with school leaders. Also, continued appreciation for our school leaders who have become very good at managing all of the detail involved in pivoting to distance learning when there's a cohort or a class that needs to go into quarantine. During this pandemic year, our nurses, of course, have played an instrumental role in supporting our staff, our families, our scholars, and we're very grateful to them for their service. So that is the report at this time, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Mary Perry Reid? Well, so many exciting updates packed into your overall update there. Congratulations to Lane Bell. It's just so fabulous to be recognized for the particular type of work that Lane is doing within our system. So really appreciate that. And I wish I could have joined you at the event at Alice Smith today, and the pictures look so wonderful. And really grateful to our governor and lieutenant governor and Commissioner Mueller for paying Hopkins a visit today and expressing appreciation for our fabulous teachers. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
All right. Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Director Andreessen.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye.
Director Kuhl.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Aye. And Chair Bouchard.
Aye. Thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So move.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion?
Chair Bouchard.
Clerk Andreessen. Oh my gosh. Vice Chair Andreessen.
Don't worry about it.
Title.
I would like to pull the gender inclusion policy from the consent calendar so that we can discuss some changes that was suggested during a community engagement session that we had with our community stakeholders.
So we would pull it from consent and then add it to our first agenda item under new business. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. In order to pull an item from consent, we do not need a board approval to pull the item. So, but what I would look for is a revised motion that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of the gender inclusion policy.
I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exclusion of the gender inclusion policy, which will be moved to new business. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
Thank you. Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Director Andreessen.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye.
Director Cool.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Aye. And Chair Bouchard.
Aye. Thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. The expenses for April included $4,318.95 for repairs to 79 student iPads and 1 staff MacBook. You know who you are. $8,800 for produce for COVID food program. Nearly $13,000 for milk for the COVID food program. And $27,000 for other groceries for the COVID food program. And I want to thank the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Minnesota Department of Education for allowing us to feed our scholars and families during the pandemic. In the Hopkins School District, we have served over 1 million free meals during the pandemic shutdown. And the USDA and Department of Education have extended the program through the 2021 and 22 school year. And it's our hope that at some point in the future, this might be a permanent program and that no student anywhere, anytime, anyhow would have to pay for a school lunch. Among other expenses, we have $54,000 for ventilation upgrades at the high school. Paid our annual $10,000 for the annual fire alarm testing in all schools. $5,100 for roof leaks at various schools. As normally happens during the spring after the thaw or during the thaw, leaks start to show up in building roofs. So we've fixed those. And $10,350 for spring tuition to North Hennepin Community College. And you are welcome, parents of district students who attend public or post-secondary education at North Hennepin. And I would also like to recognize, I go through the expenses every month. And one of the things that I've noticed and continue to notice is how much of our district spending takes place within our district. Companies like Bowers Minnoco, Spielman's BP, the cities of Minnetonka, Hopkins, Golden Valley, to which we pay rent sometimes, like in the case of the Minnetonka Ice Arena, we pay rent to the city of Minnetonka, and we pay rent to the city of Hopkins for the use of the Hopkins Pavilion. So we keep a lot of what we raise and spend within our district. So with that, I would like to approve total disbursements in the amount of $926,000 $426.38 for the period April 13, 2021 through April 26, 2021.
I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye.
Director Kuhl.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Aye. And Chair Bouchard.
Aye, thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 6 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to new business, and we'll start with our policies. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. The school board, as well as administration, did a community engagement session that was held on Thursday, April 29th, where we heard from community stakeholders about our new gender inclusion policy. We wanted to bring those proposed changes to the board so that we can feel confident in our passing of this policy. Community stakeholders had great feedback and suggestions. One was to take a closer look at the definitions that were provided within the policy. We have revised those based on scholar feedback. Those revisions were also reviewed by 3 groups of students, including our student advisory group. We also received more feedback that Assistant Superintendent Nick Lightfoot will detail for you now.
Thank you, Vice Chair Andreessen. There were some specific points that we felt would be important through the course of our community discussion to bring forward to the board for additional consideration. Specifically, there were 2 items mentioned. The first was in the section regarding gender transition at school. And specifically, the community comments identified that there would be added benefit and value to that section by identifying language which would include that school staff will not control the timelines or manner of transition for transgender and non-binary students. And as such, in our discussion with the community, we felt that that would be a valuable addition to that section. And so would bring that forward for board consideration this evening as one modification to the policy in second read. In addition, there was also a proposed modification to section 8 under the present policy. In the second paragraph, it reads, in situation where students are segregated by gender, students have the right to participate in any such activities or conform to any such rule, policy, or practice in a manner that aligns with their gender identity, consistently asserted at school. The community feedback was that it should end at gender identity and that the added language of consistently asserted at school added confusion and did not provide clarity. So taking that feedback into account, what we would look at this evening is a modification of the policy in second read to bring in front of the board those 2 proposed modifications to what was presently presented for the board. So at this time, open to any additional questions or comments, concerns as it would relate to our gender inclusion policy proposal.
You know, I think this is the perfect example of why community engagement is so important, right? That the policy that we reviewed last week was incredibly solid. And we had, you know, a few suggestions here and there at the board table. And this additional input that we got from our community between then and now has yielded these 2 really excellent and powerful changes to the policy. And so I thank you for pulling it off consent tonight so that we had a chance to really focus in on those. And I think that they're both excellent. Any other board member comments or questions on the gender inclusion policy? Okay, back to you, Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. I also wanted to thank my board colleague, Katie Peterson, and Laura Jensen, and Director Lightfoot for running the engagement session and collecting really great feedback from all of our community stakeholders. Another point that was made clear during that engagement session and from our community stakeholders is the need to continually review this policy and to be mindful as a board that how the implementation is going across the district. In particular, there is a need to focus on staff training and professional development across all of our sites and grade levels. With that, I would move that we pass the gender inclusion policy with the aforementioned changes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the gender inclusion policy. This would be in second reading with the aforementioned changes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Vice Chair Andreessen.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye.
Director Cool.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Aye. And Chair Bouchard.
Aye. Thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. And I'll turn it back to you, Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. The work of the monitoring committee has continued to move forward as we're looking at other policies that we will bring before the board table this evening. Just to give some historical reference around the work that we've done around these policies is we take them and bring them to committees that the board chairs for them to review and to give us feedback as an initial pass through, and then we discuss any necessary changes as a monitoring committee before we bring them to you as a full board for consideration. And I turn the table over to Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot to give us more details on the policies before us tonight.
Thank you, Vice Chair Andreessen. The policy that we have to review this evening is the Bullying Prohibition Policy 514. As part of our work, as was mentioned, we have been looking at a couple aspects of the policy. One of those is specifically the work of how we look at what might be occurring within our system that we aren't aware of, through whether those be tip lines or other kinds of electronic tools that may allow us to do this work in more detail. And we are continually doing that work in collaboration with looking at what our present systems provide, as well as if there are any advancements to what might be possible for us to look toward, specifically as it relates to anonymous complaint opportunities, spaces in which individuals can give us additional information that they feel would be helpful for us to have, as well as our ability to look at and be mindful of what language might be occurring in our electronic spaces, as well as what might be happening into addition what we already know. So we're in process with that discussion. That really came from a lot of the work of the review of the policy. And also as part of the review, we brought it before student groups. And the feedback that we got from student groups was not that there was a recommended change for any component of the policy. It was more the request for education. And as our scholars, our young people are in the space of social media and trying to navigate the line that even adults struggle to draw between what is that space of the school aspect of who I am as an individual, And what does that look like in the private spaces that I am or the spaces beyond the school? And what does that mean in context of cyberbullying? What does that mean about impact for the school and what happens in what space? And what we heard clearly from our secondary scholars is the request to have deeper understanding and dialogue about what that actually is. I think part of navigating is people generally trying to get a better context of where that line gets drawn, and as well, what it means to be a digital citizen, even beyond the space in the school. So we heard that clearly, and that really is not a specific element of policy, but it is a feedback component that we wanted to make sure that the board heard as part of our diligence, but there was not any specific request to change language. It was more about the request to educate so that the policy could have broader influence and understanding. So with that, there are not any reviewed changes that we would recommend, but just wanted to make sure that the board was completely aware of the dialogue that occurred around the policy and is still occurring. This also is an annual review policy, so we'll continually bring it forward on an annual basis to update you with the work.
Thank you. I remember the first time I reviewed this policy, actually as a parent, before joining the school board, I was just impressed by how robust it was. And so it's interesting to hear this feedback from the secondary students around the education component, because we all know that it's important to have excellent, equitable, anti-racist policies in place. But we know that in order for those policies to be lived out on a daily basis, that everybody needs to understand, the expectations that the policy puts forth. And so this education part is really compelling. And I'm wondering how or if this intersects with some of the work that's being done around the student handbook. So we heard the recommendations from our equity and inclusion task force last week around the handbook, and I know that there have been some ongoing discussions around this too, and so just wondering if there are any connections to draw there.
Certainly, I can speak to that. And then Vice Chair Andreessen, any updates from you as well? That is on our agenda, has been part of our conversation. And now what we're looking toward is how we operationalize those. I think what we also learned from our work with the gender inclusion policy is how we make the policies more accessible and in language that is directly on point with what our scholars feel communicates the message more broadly to them than sometimes the language of policy actually does. So we know that that's ongoing. I think right now our work is to operationalize that and update those handbooks, specifically with what information is needed and required, other than just taking pages of policy, pasting them in a place, and then kind of meeting the terms, but definitely not the spirit of what the language is intended to do. So that's what I'd offer as an opening. And Vice Chair Andreessen, anything else that might be of added value as well?
Yes, thank you. I think that we are definitely having scholars create those handbooks, and so there will be a lot of revision and ways that we can see that that policies intersect with that work. And it's something that we are definitely keeping at the front of our mind as we work through policies. One of the things that I know has been really important when we did bring this policy to our Special Education Advisory Council as well, knowing that oftentimes that group of students experiences this in a very different way than say a neurotypical student might. So the feedback that we got from them are just the ways in which this manifests in places that you wouldn't necessarily think to have written into policy. So a lot of it is that implementation, that in practice piece, and that's where we can really, I think, work around in the handbook so that it's accessible to students. They know what it means. They know what actions they can take as scholars within our system to protect themselves, to protect others. I think that it's really important that we almost translate these policies for our community and in particular for our scholars to know what options are available to them. So yes, definitely it's something that we're working on and keeping at the forefront of our mind as we do these revisions.
Really exciting and important work. Thank you for all that context. Any other board member questions or comments on policy 514?
Chair Burchard.
Yes, Director Cool.
Thank you. So during our discussion, one of the things that was brought up as far as the handbook goes is also some ideation around how do we have more assurances or more opportunities for scholars to be able to review and maybe even mandate to a certain extent that they review the handbook because there are a lot of students that may not actually review it. And so that is one of the things that was talked about, and hopefully that discussion will continue.
Is there a parent caregiver element there too? I mean, not that we can mandate parents and caregivers to read a handbook, but a way to bring them into that process, I guess, is what I'm thinking about.
Well, I know as a parent caregiver of two scholars, that was always part of, at the elementary level, our initiation and orientation into a new year. We would have to review the handbook and sign off along with our student. So there are ways, I think, that different sites make sure that caregivers and parents are aware of the handbook. Maybe, well, I don't think it's a maybe. I think that we could do a better job in promoting and getting the word out about what is in there and to make it much more accessible.
I think this idea of the more of like a multimodal handbook that the students recommended is really unique and would make the information just so much more relevant and accessible. So I really like the direction that we're moving on this. Well, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, I would look for a motion that the board approve policy 514 in first reading, and that the board directs the administration to prepare the policies for approval in second reading at the next meeting as part of the consent calendar.
I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve policy 514 in first reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Ahmed?
Aye.
Director Andreessen?
Aye.
Director Khan?
Aye.
Director Cool?
Aye.
Director Peterson? Aye. And Chair Bouchard?
Aye. Thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to our Community Education Program Report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry Reid.
Thank you so much, Chair Bouchard. I really appreciate this opportunity to pay attention to our Community Education Department by way of each of us listening to this important report that our community education leaders will provide. This year of the dual pandemics has been difficult on all districts and all district departments, and yet our community education staff, including our early learning and kids and co-teachers, provided childcare and preschool throughout the challenges brought on by COVID. Some of our community education staff even experienced job reductions due to a budget that was dramatically impacted by decreased revenue. Also, for our context this evening, the role that community education plays in a school district is vital to the very life and essence of a district. We care about facilitating lifelong learning for all ages, as well as engaging previously marginalized members of our diverse community. And we know that the partnerships we build, whether it's through facility rentals or yielding mental health supports for staff scholars, or even generating resources for our ABE scholars, is really critical to the engine that community education is and should be. So at this point, I would like to welcome our Director of Community Education, Alex Fisher, and also his team, the other community education leaders, Sarah Chovan, Lisa Walker, Dre Jefferson, Chelsea Ritland, and Holly Magdance. I hope I didn't leave anyone out. If so, Mr. Fisher can correct me, but I welcome all of these leaders to the board table this evening, and thanks so much for the report that you'll provide for us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary Perry Reid. I really appreciate your kind words, and good evening, Chair Bouchard and respective members of the board and community members. We're happy to be with you this evening. You'll hear from our community education coordinators later in the presentation. I'm very pleased that they could join us tonight. As Dr. Mary Perry Reid mentioned, it has been a challenging year for community ed programs across the state of Minnesota. And Hopkins is no different there. We have experienced a number of roadblocks that we've had to overcome. Some of these include people wanting, or in some cases needing, to stay home, which has affected our enrollment in our school-age care programs and enrichment classes. And indoor gathering restrictions have impacted facility rentals. Through it all, community education staff has shown resilience in the face of adversity. We courageously provided emergency childcare to the children of emergency medical workers and critical sector workers. We made a commitment to offer safe, fun, and educational classes and activities that followed all health and safety protocols. We quickly adapted our Kids and Company service models and the contracts in Kids and Company to meet the needs of our schools and our families. We survived 5 of those pivots. Our instructors adjusted their enrichment classes, moving successfully from in-person to online. Community Ed has made an effort to center the voices of Hopkins scholars, to align ourselves with Vision 2031, and to equip scholars with the grad traits they'll need to be community leaders. An example of this is Royal Connections. Royal Connections instructors are Hopkins high school scholars who lead community ed enrichment classes. Many of them also serve as K-6 teaching assistants in our elementary classrooms. And a large number of them are serving as K-12 tutors. We do see the light at the end of the tunnel and have reason for optimism. Summer registrations are increasing. We have more now than at the same point last year in both Kids and Company and Camp Royal. Facility rentals are coming back in a big way, almost to full strength. We are working with scholars, community ed staff, parents, and community partners to create a community engagement framework that will provide structure, best practices, and serve as a reference document for how we go about engaging our community. Our early learning staff members are collaborating to build one cohesive preschool called simply Hopkins Preschool, instead of having 2 separate programs, Stepping Stones and Kaleidoscope. And we are growing the Hopkins Alumni Network, which allows our alumni and high school seniors to be connected globally in a way that has never happened before. The Hopkins Alumni Network platform provides access to mentors, jobs, internships, and college planning advice. Now I'd like to hand it over to our community education coordinators to briefly share some highlights. Up first is Sarah Chovan, Assistant Director of Early Learning. Sarah?
Thank you, Alex. It is a pleasure to be with you tonight to tell the story of the early childhood school year. I want to start back in August. Our early childhood screening team was one of the first in the West Metro districts to begin virtual screening. From that point in August, mid-August, we've been successfully screening for families of children who've got 3 to 5-year-olds mandated by Minnesota for this entire year. At this point, we are now able to do both virtual and if the screener or family feels an in-person screen is necessary, we can also move to that. Our Ecfe, Early Childhood Family Education program, during the course of this year, has transformed themselves. They moved from a traditional semester program to a trimester program. They did that in order to meet the ever-changing needs of families during the course of this year. And as we watched the ebb and flow of needs, they've dynamically shifted over the course of this year to provide programming that is spot on and exactly what is needed at the time it is requested. In this way, they've been able to add registrations over the course of this year and remain robust. Our early childhood family education programming, we like to say, serves from diapers to 3rd grade. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, we began the Diaper Bank program. This year, over the course of this school year, we have been able to distribute 2,300 diapers so far. And for those of us who have moved away from that parenting of very young children, that's a really good reminder of how many diapers each young child goes through. We've moved into some elementary sites. Parents were looking for more support as we shifted to distance learning. We were able to provide a parent educator to facilitate support groups virtually for parents at select elementary sites from pre-K to 3rd grade. And even now, as I look at some of the elementary newsletters, I can see in the newsletters our little block of videos for parenting tips and invitations to continue to be part of those groups. As we look to this next summer, we've partnered with Resource West, SKIP, which is Schools and Communities in Partnership, and the Stepping Stones and Kids & Co programs to create a scholarship. Knowing that summer programming needs to be more accessible, we've created a scholarship of $20,000 to start for Stepping Stones summer programming as well as Kids & Co summer programming. We've been able to allocate over $15,000 in scholarships so far for families anticipating summer program needs. You can switch, Alex. Thank you. I'd like to talk briefly about 4 different ways that we are working to have stronger collaborations, both within our early childhood programming, as well as across the district. Our early childhood special education programming is under the umbrella of early childhood. We have maintained and built inclusive classrooms in both our preschools and our Ecfe programs. I think one advantage of the assistant director position for early childhood is that when there are issues or questions that arise for early childhood in any one of our programs, we're able to work directly across programs and collaborate with staff to problem solve and address issues as they come up, which reduces that feeling of silos between programs. We've also had this opportunity this year working with the EL coordinator to have an EL coach who is an expert in early childhood working to directly coach some of the preschool teachers on strategies, on whole classroom strategies, as well as individualized goals for students who have dual languages in their home. We've been able to access a Hopkins Education Foundation grant entitled Anti-Racist and Authentically Inclusive Early Childhood. This pilot program has pulled 15 staff across all of our educational programs. We come together throughout the school year, it's a year-long program, to have professional development. We're learning about anti-racist strategies, and we're supporting each other in our own personal growth, as well as actions that we can and will take to disrupt the system that we currently have and create more anti-racist teaching, curriculum, and classrooms. Alex did mention that we are moving to a one preschool plan. We started this year's planning with a parent survey at the beginning of the year to gather information about what is most needed. We then took that data and had our teachers and our staff envision what we could do to meet parenting needs. Over the course of the next year, we will continue to have parent focus groups and staff town halls to shape our one preschool program, so that ultimately our families will be able to access the kind of care that they need at the location that they need it, whether it be half day, full day, or somewhere in between. I'd like to shift to Lisa Walker, my colleague in out of school time.
Good evening, Hopkins leaders. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story of school time programming this year. Our Kids and Company childcare program, when the world shut down in March, served our emergency workers. We had 48 scholars that we served from March to June, and I think you all have heard the story of the impact that had on our program. But we have hope, so we've talked through that. We served 389 scholars through five pivots this school year. We are currently providing mandated free childcare for emergency workers. Now that we've gone into this final phase, I do believe emergency care is at this moment not open, and we're back to what we would call our new normal, I guess. And as Sarah referred to, we have a partnership with Resource West that is quite amazing, and we're using that funding to help our Hopkins scholars and families access quality care for this summer, which has been a huge success, and I think it is the beginning of many partnerships with that nonprofit to do great work for Hopkins families. Next, Alex. Our youth enrichment classes, we really had to reinvent ourselves through COVID with youth enrichment. We're really, really proud of our Royal Connections program and all the youth Hopkins scholars that we've hired. We've offered over 70 enrichment classes from our Hopkins High School scholars. Our commitment to health and safety, following the CDC and MDH guidelines that are ever changing, and keeping up on that work to make sure that all of our offerings, whether it's childcare enrichment for youth, enrichment for adults, we're following all those guidelines and being very safe. Our virtual options for youth, we had 20 plus online opportunities for youth K up. Some examples would be home activity sewing kits, virtual chess classes, driver's ed, parent toolkits that we offered through My Health, very successful online options that kept community ed going during the complete shutdown. We also offered lots of family enrichment, lots of kits that could be done at home. And one of the really great opportunities was virtual cooking classes that were really well received. We have amazing hope right now. We feel our families are starting to feel safe. They're starting to return. Our enrollment for summer is giving us hope, definitely. Camp Royal registration, Kids and Company registration, our youth track camp that we've done historically, that had to be canceled last year, that we register over 200 kids, is almost full. So that's a great way to look at the world that we're living in right now. And we also, at this very moment in time, we have 130 students who have used 14,795 in scholarships so that we could keep people, families and youth still enjoying enrichment in whatever way they are comfortable with. Our adult enrichment. So we adapted to our community. We pivoted all of our instructors to an online format, all those that were able to do that. Some of our highlights were offering LGBTQ classes through our LGBTQ support liaison, Laura Jensen. Those were very successful. Anti-racism series that we offered with Dr. George Dolan and Chantel Burgess from Gatewood. That was a series that went over really well, very well attended, great feedback. We also did a local government, how to be involved with Hopkins Mayor Jason Gadd. That had really good feedback too. We became a pickleball center at the community center. Who would have thought? We've reinvented ourselves through pickleball, and it's brought in some great revenue. And people who have never used the Eisenhower Community Center, and a building that's a beautiful building that we love to show off, we brought in many people who have never been into the building, and they were able to play pickleball. And we've gotten some amazing feedback from that opportunity that we were able to do that. Adult activity kits. We were mailing them all over the country, one to California. So our kits for adults to be able to stay interactive with each other have been a real success. And we are going to be thinking differently about how we bring adults back into enrichment. We know some people will never come back. The ongoing opportunity to work with our instructors and bring new instructors into our new norm is an exciting opportunity so that we can serve all of our Hopkins community. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chelsea Ritland, who's our coordinator of adult options.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening, everyone. I am Chelsea Ritland, coordinator of adult options in education for our adult education consortium that is Hopkins, St. Louis Park, and Minnetonka schools. And we crafted a new mission and vision statement this year that I thought I would share with all of you this evening. Our mission is preparing adults with the competency and confidence to achieve their dreams, effectively engage in their communities, and to inspire a lifetime of learning. And our vision is that we strive to create a learning environment that is welcoming, safe, and peaceful. We are committed to social justice and anti-racism. We aim to build a culture of high expectations for staff and learners. We seek to create a school where all learners are seen, heard, and thrive. And and equity has certainly been at the forefront and our guidepost as we fully transitioned to an online adult basic education program last March to the present. And we will continue to be a fully online program through the summer. A little bit about our participation and what that has looked like in this shift from in-person to online classes. We've had 602 learners, 474 of which have been Hopkins learners this past fiscal year, from 64 different countries with 40 different languages represented. So our enrollment numbers, due to the pandemic and the online learning, have been down, as is the statewide trend. We're 27% down than we were the year prior, but we're actually well above the state average. And it's interesting that our attendance rates have gone up. So our overall contact hours of students attending our classes is down 18% compared to the year prior. And I'll note as well that the class hours that we offered were cut by over 33% or above in order to adapt to an online learning format. So that's actually really a strong overall contact hour and attendance rate. So I think we can say that the students that are opting into our online learning are enjoying it, and they're well attended. They're able to access quite easily, but we're still excluding some that are waiting for us to return to in-person by being online, for those that would rather wait to opt into the in-person only classes. A little highlights of classes outside of our ESL and GED classes are our career classes. And I wanted to mention our Child Development Associate class that takes place at our Minnetonka site and is open to our Hopkins learners as well. That's the certificate that you need to work in a childcare or in a career in early learning. And is now articulated with Hopkins, with Hennepin Technical College for credits into their early learning track for those that want to continue their education in early learning at HTC. Our healthcare career pathway classes are all funded by our integrated English language and civics education grant that we're in year 2 of a 3-year cycle. We have an introduction to healthcare careers, a medical terminology class that's also articulated with HTC for those that want to continue on into the health unit coordinator program or other healthcare career pathways at HTC, and a nursing assistant preparation course. Our Understanding K-12 Education class is a very popular class for our adult learners who are also parents, many of whom are parents in the Hopkins schools system, to learn about how to navigate the school system and become a partner in their child's education. That class also went fully online this year and has transitioned now into a career in paraprofessionals course. So many of those learners and those that also have strong background in education from their home countries are learning more about how to become paraprofessionals in the Hopkins school districts and in school districts in our communities in the West Metro. Our college and career counselor collaborates with all of those instructors and is able to assist students in those classes and in our entire program in their transition to college and help them in their career search. Our computer skills were also very challenging to transfer to an online format. You can imagine focusing on digital literacy skills and teaching basic computer skills over Google Meet and with learners that are just trying to master that for themselves is very challenging. And we have a fabulous AmeriCorps CTEP Community Technology Empowerment Program member who leads those classes and teaches basic computer skills, Google Docs and Drive, skills against scams, and holds other workshops around digital literacy. And Alex, you can go to the next slide. Part of what has made our online learning so successful is our new learner orientation, as well as our in-person technology help. So all new learners into our program first attend an in-person orientation. And a big chunk of that is focusing on how to do Google Meet, how to be an online learner. So they're not only learning about our mission and our vision and who we are and our program expectations, but really getting some practice and focusing on how to be an online learner. And that includes how to access our distance learning platforms that our teachers will assign for our students. That includes Canvas, which thanks to the Hopkins license, all teachers in our consortium now have a Canvas class for their online learning class that students really have shared feedback that they report they like that additional element to our classes, that they feel like a college level student now getting access to those Canvas classes. So that's been a really wonderful addition that the pandemic has pushed us towards, that I think would have taken us a little bit longer to get there had we not been in a pandemic. And the in-person technology help. So there's an ongoing drop-in for students to come in and receive one-on-one in-person technology help to help them continue when they're having challenges with online learning. We were also able to distribute 300 laptops through PCs for People in Hennepin County that learners were able to keep and take home. And we were one of the first ABE programs in March in the early days to start lending our Chromebooks and to learners right away. And then we were able to acquire hotspots as well. So we also have a Chromebook and hotspot lending library. So our goal is that every learner has a device at home and Wi-Fi connection at home to connect with us if they want to take online classes. A couple notes about where we're headed towards the future. There's a teacher verification model that MDE has approved for adult education programs to receive proxy hours. We can now count contact hours, which is a big part in how our program is funded, for asynchronous learning. So we're taking that into account. We're doing some piloting with the teacher verification model and asynchronous learning over the summer in our June and July classes. And we're really deep into reimagining 21, 22 and beyond, and how we will take with us elements of online learning that have been a great benefit to digital literacy skills and to an increased access for students who otherwise weren't in our program, as we also think about returning to in-person to gain back some of those things that we're not able to do in an in-person ESL classroom. So we're using student voice and teacher input and staff reimagining to think about a hybrid model going into the future. And please visit our website at anytimeadultoptions.org to see more of the classes that we offer, college and career planning, our weekly jobs bulletin, and a lot of interesting student links to get a peek into how students in our adult education program are learning English and moving towards their goals to achieve their GED and move into different careers. And with that, I will hand it over to our district facility use coordinator, Dre Jefferson.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good evening, everybody. Happy I can be here to share some information about our facility use program. And just a little background on what we do and how the pandemic has affected us. Our facility use program is not only the way that our district can connect with our community beyond the school walls and borders of the academic day, it's also our community can connect to each other. So we serve a lot of different aspects of the community, whether it be our Opportunity Partners program, where they come in and do their staff training and development in Eisenhower Community Center, that was cut off by the pandemic, to our community sports and recreation departments that use our facilities to bring children together to do the things that they love to do. So when we had to shut down back in March of 2020, obviously our department was affected in great fashion, and it took a while for us to be able to even understand how we would move forward and continue to operate under the restrictions that were put in place to keep everyone safe. Since that time, we have found a way to safely execute, and kind of how we measure the way that we're doing things is, can we safely host big events and then trickle that down little by little to make everyone feel comfortable and safe coming back into our doors. And we've been able to do that and give our community confidence. We've held more than 10 athletic tournaments and events throughout the course of the last 9 months, and that continues to grow. We've seen an exponential increase in demand for our facilities based on word of mouth of how we've been able to execute these events in a way that's accessible but also safe. And we've had our performing arts sector, which has been very strong in the past, has found an increase over 2020, even demand prior to COVID. And we're excited to have groups over the last 3 weeks leave the Minneapolis Convention Center and come to Hopkins for a safer, more secure event. So that's a huge success for us. It creates a lot of work for our staff, but we'd much rather be busy than bored, as we were last summer. So that's really exciting. And beyond that, the pandemic allowed us to review and rethink some of the ways that we bring people into our doors. And we rewrote our facility use handbook and included much needed language that rewarded our community for being loyal to us. So we now give people an incentive to come back to us year after year and explore our spaces and continue to be exposed to all the great things about Hopkins, and give them comfort not only to use our facilities, but bring their families into our districts. And with that rethinking and reimagining, it's really important, and it has been, for us to find ways to continue to connect to the community on a small scale when we can't host large events, and give them a way to access our facilities when it's not a 3,000 person packed event center. It's more of a 1-to-1 or maybe 5-to-1 community setting. So our fitness center has long been a staple of the Minnetonka recreation program. And we want to take that to another level for our Hopkins students and families and anyone who is connected to Hopkins Public Schools. So we're starting to implement a program for sports and fitness training that is going to be accessible. Many of those programs throughout the metro area have priced out a lot of families that want to take advantage of these services. And we know how important sports and fitness is, and just recreation, to not only our physical but mental health. And we've seen that very much in the last year. So we want to create the Hopkins Fit Forward program, which gives students and parents and families an opportunity to access our facilities, get some specialized coaching from qualified professionals, at a cost that's going to allow them to feel comfortable coming in and not harming their family to take advantage of those opportunities. Beyond that, as we work to become an anti-racist district and that reflect in everything that we do, we're asking some hard questions, even with our facilities. And one of those hard questions is about the Lindbergh Center facility. We've heard from some of our community members that that building name doesn't represent what our district should stand for. So we're going to ask that question, and we have asked that question, and we're in the process of determining whether or not the Lindbergh Center will continue to operate under that name or move to a different title to make sure that it's more reflective on what we do and who we are. So I am extremely proud, and I would like to recognize all of our frontline staff members, our building supervisors, our event planners, our custodians, and everyone who has been dramatically affected with their hours being cut and even their jobs being cut because we didn't have the ability to execute events. But they've been extremely resilient in coming back and allowing us to do what we do. And now we hope that we're on track to nearly reach what we were projected to reach as our 2020 revenue goals. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Holly Magdans, our coordinator of community partnerships.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to provide an update on our community partnerships work this past year, some highlights as well as some reimagining activities that are in place and where we're looking at going next year. So as Alex mentioned earlier, the Royal Connections is definitely a highlight of our community partnership work in our department this year. Royal Connections was birthed out of last spring and summer, where we saw an opportunity and need to hire Hopkins High School scholars to become trained and teach community education enrichment classes that was affordable, low cost, and on a sliding fee scale. We piloted last summer with great success. While it started small, we had 100% of our participants say that they would definitely sign up for another Royal Connections class for either themselves or their child. And with that, we were able to expand the Royal Connections program this past spring of 2021 to hire additional instructors through the Achievement and Integration Plan. We have hired teaching assistants, one-on-one tutors, and focusing primarily in June. We will have these instructors until the end of June. We will be doing a lot of enrichment this summer as well. And also, under this Royal Connections umbrella, we have some specific task forces that are working with district leadership on various project goals, one of them being our community education engagement framework, and another being some around the district policy work and restorative culture. Another really exciting new partnership that we've blossomed this past year is with AmeriCorps. Under COVID-19, last summer, Serve Minnesota had a pilot emergency response summer AmeriCorps program. And Hopkins Community Ed applied and received one AmeriCorps volunteer, paid volunteer, but paid through AmeriCorps. And they worked with us for 10 weeks with our Summer Connections program. It was a fantastic asset to our department and helped us get through our really, really tough summer. This year, Serve Minnesota expanded its funding based on the increased need and unfortunate increasing disparities that we've seen in the past year. And with that great expansion of their summer program, Hopkins Community Ed applied for it and was awarded 14 AmeriCorps summer workers that will be with us for 10 weeks this summer, 2021. We are hoping, we're in the process of getting matched and hiring, but we are hoping many will be Hopkins High School graduates. You have to be at least 18 and have a high school diploma or GED by the time the program starts, which is June 7th. So most of our graduating seniors are eligible. And then also we have a VISTA, which we're very excited about. VISTA is a division of AmeriCorps that specifically works on capacity building in nonprofits and school districts. And we were applied and were awarded to be a host site. And just today we confirmed our new placement, who will be here for a full 12 months starting in August. And we couldn't be more thrilled. This VISTA will greatly help our community education department, building up an infrastructure for volunteers, community partners, helping us with our marketing and communications. So we couldn't be more proud of that. We've already talked about Resource West, a great partner of ours. A new partnership this year has been we established a no-cost contract with Hazelden Betty Ford and the Hopkins High School to contract with a student support specialist out of Hazelden that specifically works on a referral basis to help students and our families that have concerns around substance use. So that's a great asset to our district. I know the referrals have been actively coming through, and a huge opportunity for us to better serve our scholars and families. I also think we'll go to the next slide. And again, just wrapping up the whole reimagining. I know we've talked quite a bit about that throughout this presentation, but we never would have been in a position without the pandemic to be as far ahead as reimagining what our department looks like and where we're going than we have been in this past year. One area that we are reimagining is our SCIP, so our Schools and Community and Partnership Family Services Collaborative. I coordinate that SCIP collaborative. We've looked very different this year under COVID. All of the family service collaboratives have that I've talked to across Hennepin County, and that's okay. A lot of the work that SCIP does, we're doing behind the scenes and in different ways. And we know SCIP will look different moving forward. So that's something we are working on as we come out of the challenges of COVID. Same with the Hopkins One Voice Coalition. We are looking at reimagining that as well. And yeah, I already mentioned the AmeriCorps Vista and some of the new work around enrichment and the community education framework. Alex mentioned that as well. That is actively a process we're actively involved in. And then just finally to wrap up, all of our reimagining work and our community partnerships, and I can say with confidence across the district or across our department and district, very much aligns with Vision 2031, and we have that Vision 2031 absolutely at the forefront as we think differently and innovatively, and we're excited for the future. And with that, that's the conclusion of my remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the coordinators for helping me present, and want to offer an opportunity for questions if there are any, also understanding that we have taken up a considerable amount of time, so I apologize for that, but also happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions or comments from my board colleagues? You know, as I was listening to our suite of wonderful presenters this evening, I was reflecting on the report that you gave around this time last year that was very different, right? And I just remember that we were all feeling this pain and this stress, of what was going to come and how it was already impacting our community at that point and how it was going to continue to. And so I was just feeling such a sense of joy and hopefulness listening to you tonight. And then also gratitude. I think pivot is like the word of the year, right? That and unprecedented. And I think about all the pivoting that this team has done throughout the year, and in the midst of that pivoting, really identifying some specific, unique opportunities. And so many of those were highlighted this evening within each of your areas to continue to innovate and grow. as a department. And so I just really appreciated hearing at that level of detail, what's been happening. I met with the executive director of Resource West last week, and we talked a bit about the partnerships at various levels within community ed, and just really excited about that. That's how we continue to serve all of our families well, is through these partnerships and connections. So I'm grateful for this team's work in making that happen.
Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Director Adams.
I would echo your comments. I had serious concerns last year about the ongoing viability of our community education, and did what I could to find some additional funding from the state. I can't say I was very successful at that, unfortunately, but I'm glad to see that things are rebuilding back to the point where they were before the pandemic, and that the forecast for financial viability looks a lot better. I was looking at the adult basic education numbers, and a little surprised and concerned that there's only 8 graduates this year. Chelsea, is there going to be a graduation? Highlights of my year.
Thank you for that question, Director Adams. Yes, we have now, as of today, 9 graduates. It's a smaller group this year, given our lower numbers overall. Although we do have around this time quite a few more students graduate. So we may have even 15 is what we're kind of guesstimating at by the end of the year. So to answer your question, yes, we have now we've thought a lot about that question and what's the best way to hold the ceremony with this size of graduates. We definitely want to honor them and give them the opportunity to celebrate with school leaders and family and friends in cap and gown. So we've now made the decision just recently to hold the graduation ceremony outdoors in a semi-casual format at a park in St. Louis Park on June 11th. And so please look for that invitation from me and my team to the board and to Dr. Mary Perry Reid as well, forthcoming.
All right, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions from my board colleagues?
Chair Bouchard?
Yes. Vice Chair Andreessen.
Thank you. I'm really excited as well to see this new report and all the innovating that's going on around community education. I had a quick question around funding for early childhood, wondering if that is evening out or if we're getting, a consistent and predictable revenue stream. And then just quick, a shout out to you, Holly Magdas, the way that you really leveraged that one emergency AmeriCorps person over the summer. I know it was a frantic rush to get that that application in, and you really took that one resource and grew it into this amazing program in our district that is giving our scholars so much. I'm just so impressed. Thank you.
Director Andreessen, I can answer your question then about funding. Thank you for the question. At this time, we are still waiting to hear final decisions from the legislators on both School Readiness Plus and our Pathways funding. We have applied for and been accepted. We've received, as per MDE, the Pathways scholarships that we generally would receive pending approval from legislative action. And SRP, School Readiness Plus, which is the main bulk of our funding that would come, is also on hold and waiting. We are optimistic that it will come through, and we are planning for the year to move forward with that funding.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Wonderful. Well, thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. It's a pleasure to be in virtual community with you all this evening. So with that, we'll move on to our board member reports.
Chair Bouchard.
Yes, Director Adams.
I'll lead off here. Not a whole lot has happened since the last time we met a week ago, but last Thursday I did have my letter to the editor in the Sun newspapers appear regarding school funding. I know there's a misconception among some of the general public, and unfortunately even among some of our legislators, that our COVID-19 funds will patch up any gaps in school funding this year. And there's some severe restrictions on the use of those funds. So I wanted to make that clear to our public. So that was the topic of that letter. On the Friday, the 30th, I attended the MSBA chat and briefly attended the LAC meeting, where we set a strategy for how to deal with our legislators going into the final days of, or what we hope to be the final days of the session. Although I did get something today from, I think it was the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, that said, be prepared for a June 18th conclusion of the legislative session. But I think I'll start a pool as to when it actually ends. Yesterday, at the request of MSBA and MASBO, the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, I testified in the conference committee in support of the State Senate File 1098, which reduces the number of notifications required for school districts covered by collective bargaining agreements. About 2 to 3 years ago, I can't remember exactly when, the legislature passed something called the Wage Theft Bill, which had some unintended consequences for school districts. Because we're covered by collective bargaining agreements already, and which typically very specifically note when we are required to notify staff of lane changes, of rate change, wage changes, things of that nature, we're already subject to a lot of oversight. And any mistakes that we make in pay for our employees generally gets corrected very quickly, because we hear about it very quickly. Layered on top of that, requirements of the wage theft law say that we have to do additional notifications. And in Hopkins, we've had to hire some part-time help to deal with the unfunded mandate that the state imposed on us to do these notifications. So it was not the intent of the author of the bill, Senator Pratt from Prior Lake. And he's now introduced some language into the omnibus bill. It's a jobs omnibus bill that would reduce or relax the notifications for any organization covered by a collective bargaining agreement, which most school districts are. So I testified on that behalf. And I just would like to point out to the board and the viewing public at large that there was an op-ed piece in today's Star Tribune by Paula Cole, whom I know. She's a school board member in Richfield, and advocating for maintaining the current tiered licensure program for teachers in Minnesota. Right now, there's a 4-tier system. There's some people who would like to do away with the first 2 tiers, which do not require teacher prep education. And anyone that's concerned about teacher preparation or charges money for teacher preparation is opposing the current tiered licensure system. So they're trying to change the rules so that there's got to be more teacher preparation required. I am a licensed teacher, and I have to say, what I learned about teaching, for the most part, did not come from teacher preparation classes. And I was discussing this with my wife today, who is also licensed. In fact, in some circles, they're considered to be a joke. In my case, what I got taught in teacher prep classes was about 10 years behind the times. So it was not really relevant to my my teaching situation. Most of what I learned about teaching came from mentors and advisors in actual field teaching situations. So I question the value of having everyone who's a tier 1 or tier 2 teacher to go through what is in many cases is an expensive teacher preparation program. And it unfortunately discriminates against people that do not have the means to do so. I know several teachers who came from other states, who are fully qualified in other states, who could not become teachers or elected not to become licensed in Minnesota because they would be forced to spend tens of thousands of dollars on teacher prep programs. And I think that's a discriminatory practice and ought to be done away with. But there are certain parties in the legislature that would like to do away with the current licensure system. So, at any rate, Paula's op-ed piece in today's Star Tribune, I think, fairly encapsulates the concerns about doing away with our current tiered licensure system. So that's my report.
Thank you, Director Adams. Any other board member reports this evening?
Chair Bouchard.
Vice Chair Andreessen.
You knew I was coming next. Well, first, I would just like to say happy Teacher Appreciation Day to everyone. I was present at the Alice Smith gathering where Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan came, and I think that it was wonderful that that community was highlighted as well as the staff. I would just like to say that as a parent and a school board member, I think that one of the most important things we can do to show teachers that we appreciate them is to give them the resources they need to do their job and to call on the legislature to stop blocking the critical funding for families, for summer learning, and for early childhood. The Senate is refusing to approve the governor's $150 million summer learning proposal. And I'm hoping that everyone can just make a couple calls, send a few emails to let everyone know that that is important and that we appreciate our staff. I also did a LAC chat on Monday with Lori Pryor, who's one of our district representatives, and she is on the Education Conference Committee. They hadn't held any meetings yet, but it was good to get an update from her. We're going to stay in touch as the Senate and the House try to negotiate to an education omnibus bill that can be passed. It is really important for all of Hopkins families to continue to contact your legislator about education funding. Tell them why it's important to you and what your priorities are for your family. West Junior High had their student-led and IB-focused conferences, which was really interesting. And they coupled that with a school carnival complete with food trucks. And everyone got to socialize and connect in person outside. And I hear that the most popular part of that carnival was the dunk tank, where community members got to soak some of their teachers. It was a lot of fun and a great way to build community.
And both principals.
Nice. And Thursday is parent-teacher conferences at the high school. So one last, if you have a graduating senior, chance to connect with your teachers. And we got some news just a few weeks ago that our session centering student voice in school board work has been selected to be part of the Student-Centered Learning for Equity Conference. That is coming up on Wednesday, May 26th. I will be presenting along with Director Peterson and our student reps, Elliot and Linda. So if you have anything you want us to add to the presentation, be sure to include. Please let me or Katie know. We are looking forward to that. I think that we'll learn a lot. And then the Spring Fest annual fundraiser for Resource West is happening on May 20th at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on having your session. I should say our session, because it is the collective work that that so many of our scholars have been doing here in the district, accepted, and really happy that Hopkins will be highlighted and included there. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
Director Andreessen, are you going to have to fly to San Francisco for that, or?
No, it's fully online? Virtual.
Oh, that's too bad.
Chair Bouchard.
Director Cool.
Thank you. So I wanted to use my time tonight just to kind of provide an update. As we all know that we're starting to approach the start of the election season, especially for the school board, I wanted to provide an update on my future intentions. So since my appointment in December, I've had the opportunity to really immerse myself in the difficult financial and policy decisions that the Hopkins School Board has and will be addressing this year. Throughout, I have been impressed by the transparency, accessibility, and engagement in which the Hopkins family really has provided for all of the community. As I've looked beyond the school board, I have noticed how important these three concepts are: transparency, accessibility, and engagement. They really have become very important in my life. To such an extent that I've decided to make these concepts a much larger part of my life. With that in mind, I've made the tough decision not to pursue election for the school board going forward. I am making a change in my life based on just the amazing experiences that I've had with the Hopkins School Board's approach on engagement. So I will forever be an everyday supporter of Hopkins School and the district. And I really do look forward to the remaining time I have on the school board. And I just can't be thankful enough for the leadership that I've gotten from all of my board colleagues, the Dr. Mary Reid, and all of the directors that work within the school district. It is such an impressive organization, and I can't tell you how much I've learned from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cool. Well, you'll stick around through December, we hope. Excellent. Great. Any other board member reports this evening? I will keep mine short and sweet because Vice Chair Andreessen did me a favor and covered some of what I was going to talk about. So just want to express my sincere gratitude to our teachers who have not only been involved, of course, in the day-to-day work of guiding our scholars through this year, but also an integral part of the visioning and the planning for these changes that we've heard about at our past two workshops that we're looking forward to in the upcoming year. And so as an educator who is engaged in very similar work, just at a different organization, both the day-to-day and then thinking to the future, I just really, really value all of the contributions that you've made to our Hopkins Schools community this year, and just hold you in such high esteem. And in the interest of transparency and updates, I will be seeking re-election to the Hopkins School Board this coming year. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve the incidental reports.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the incidental reports. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Director Andreessen.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye. Director Cool.
Aye.
Director Peterson, aye, and Chair Bouchard.
Aye, thank you, Clerk Peterson. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. And next, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Oh, wow. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Doubtful. Clerk Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Bouchard. Director Adams.
Aye.
Director Ahmed.
Aye.
Director Andreessen.
Aye.
Director Khan.
Aye.
Director Cool.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Me. I've wanted to say that all along. And Chair Bouchard.
Me, myself, and I. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is adjourned at 8:43 p.m. Thank you all so much.
Aye.